Shut up and sit down.
Hello guys, this is Andy from Bigmeks Workshop and Paint Studio, and today I'm painting a Vindicare Assassin as a commission piece. I'm going to start straight into a video, and I'm starting off on the visor. Now, as you can see, I painted the sprayed thin black, and I'm making a very, very thin layer of Vallejo's pale grey blue. It takes me a couple of coats to get that layer down, just because it's ever so thin. Once I've got the base down, I then highlight it again, incredibly thin paint, using Vallejo's off-white, which is just there just to bring that visor up, making sure it's looking starkly different to the rest of the armour, which I'm going to go for very classic sort of looking assassin sort of colours. Once I've got the visor where I want it, I then mix a 50-50 of off-white and white, applying it towards the raised areas, as you can imagine, just to get that them highlights in as a final highlight, and then drop in just pure white into the sharpest edges, really bringing that visor out, making it really stand out against the black. Now, this is the first time I've painted one of these. Never actually painted an assassin before. I've had one for a long time, but it's not one of the new plastics, which are very, very nice fixed, to be fair. A lot of interesting detail. The character's nice. It's just a pity that it's only one pose. I would have liked to see the multiple poses like they did on the releases a while back. So I'm just adding a few more touches with the pure white, just to really bring out them highlights. The paint, like I said, is very thin all across. It's almost coloured water at this point. Really bringing the highlights into a nice and crisp. So now we're going to the strapping. I've gone for Rhinox hide. I wanted it to be a very muted colour across the entirety. Obviously it's meant to be some kind of stealth suit, so I wanted to keep the colours looking really dark, although the faceplate is white. I wanted something a bit more subtle along the leather straps. So Rhinox hide is where we went. Once I'd got the base down, and whilst that was drying, I used burnt red for the visor's glasses. It's really worked well, standing at the side of the pure white faceplate. Really stood out nice, and I just have to be very careful not to spread too much paint onto the white, which, as you can imagine, is very easy with such a small piece. So after a couple of very thin layers on that, I got a nice base cut and base paint. So the grenade and the sheath for the combat knife was painted in Vallejo's German uniform. I wanted it to look like very much a classic sort of grenade colour, you know, the typical green. So I went ahead with that one, and it gives a really nice even coverage, quite matte. The holster was painted in Vallejo's brown salmon. This is the first time I've used this particular colour, and it really does offer a nice, quite lively brown touch to the figure. I also did the same for the ammo pouches and things. The tassels for the knife were painted in burnt red as well. And then I've started putting some strong tone over the entirety of the leather work, the red as well on the tassels, and also across all the brown work as well. So get back to the eyes, and with the on the eyes, I used Vallejo's red as the initial highlight for the visor. This just livens that burnt red up really nicely. And with it being just on such a small part of the fig, you don't need to glaze quite so much as you would on some of the larger pieces. So a couple of layers on that. Obviously I was deliberately keeping the layers thinner than I normally do. I was just trying something out. I can be quite lazy when it comes to mixing my paint, so I was being very diligent in making the paint extra thin. So there you are, it's the current work in progress as it stands. The paintwork I've not touched on the armour at this point, so I'm just bringing them other colours out. And I start out, I've just got a bit of the a few base highlights on the brown, which is just straight brown sand again. I wanted to use the base colour as its first highlight. Once I'd got a nice even coverage where I wanted the highlights to be, I mixed a bit of sand yellow and off-white, ivory, to add for the highlights. I then mixed this back down, toned it back down with the strong tone, which had been thinned, just to bring the bring the highlights back, as I made them too bright. So I added a couple of layers of very thin strong tone to it, just to tone it down. I'd not got an effect what I liked. Didn't really fit the rest of the model, so I wanted it to dull it down a bit, make it less obvious. Once I toned it down, I went back over with the sand yellow and ivory, working the forward edges, brightening them up, bring them highlights forward, obviously being careful not to spread them too far back, and once I'd done that, I'd also tone them back down again with the strong tone, just to blend them in a nice way. The grenade and the knife, they were highlighted by mixing German uniform and ivory, just to lift the colour. I tried not to add too much highlight into it, because it's the sort of thing what shouldn't catch a light really well. But obviously you need to, because otherwise the model would just look really flat, and that's not cool at all. The extra highlight was again a little bit more ivory in the green, just to pick out the top edges, to really get them highlights striking. Obviously here I misplaced my highlight a little bit, and I just had to blend it in a little. So onto the ammo casings in there. Well, the ammo casing I did in brassy brass. I wanted them to look like actual rounds, so I went for a proper brass colour. it really made the items stand out nicely against the black. Just to make it look just right. I also did the same on the arm and also the Aquila on the rifle as well. As you can see, I'm painting these separate. This is because I wanted to get a decent highlights across the centre of his torso. The Rhinox hide was then mixed with a touch of brown sand for the highlights. I kept this more on the dark spectrum for the first ones, just to really subtly bring them highlights in. Then I threw a second highlight with a touch more brown sand, just as a secondary highlight on the real sharp corners. As you can see, I'm doing a suit last. This was because I wasn't quite sure how I was going to highlight. I didn't know if I was what colours I was going to highlight the black with. But I eventually stumped to doing a blue highlight. Now this was using a 50-50 mix of black primer and Vallejo Air Blue. This was really thin. It's basically a wash what sits on the surface. Now you can, it's quite stark on the camera, but when it's actually dried, it mutes itself down. So it actually took several layers to get any kind of highlight on. Once I've got the highlights in the right sections, I added more blue to it. Again, extra thin, just focusing towards the more raised regions of the stealth suit. And right at the final points, I used just a touch of the blue on its own, very thin, just to finish those highlights. Now at this point, I've noticed that the armour had become too blue, so once I'd got the highlights in the right spot, I mixed, thinned down some Nuln Oil and went over the entirety of the fig just to make it black. It really brought the colours together, making it look like a black suit what was catching the light. So here we are using the Nuln Oil, getting it all over the fig. I wasn't being too cautious to stay away from the brown regions or the brasses, but obviously trying to keep it away from the ammo packs and the knife. And this was just to bring that layer nice and bring that, them highlights in together with the rest of the suit to make it look like one solid piece. The rifle, I decided I was going to highlight in a different colour, so I started off with the a mix of black grey. I just added a touch of black to it, and this was just on the raised areas and also on the barrel. I wanted the barrel to be grey as well. I didn't want it to look like it bounced light off it, as that would be a nightmare for a sniper. So I kept the entire fig, entirety of the rifle black. So I added black grey to the black, and eventually, once I'd got the highlights at how I'd wanted them, did a second highlight towards the fine points of the weapon system with Dawnstone, just to add the finishing touches of the highlights, really make it strike, to make it really striking highlights, but still in keeping with the rest of the fig. All painted, ready to go. Just needed to finish the base, which was done off camera. as that's an important part of the model itself. Now, if you've got any questions, please feel free to drop us a message. We're more than happy to answer any questions you've got. I hope you enjoyed this fig and as much as I did, and I hope you learned something from our tutorials. So if you want to see more of this, please hit like, hit subscribe. Every subscribe counts. So take it easy, guys, and see you in the next one.